Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is a topic of why capitalism is good for society, okay? So, when it comes to the topic of why capitalism is good for society, there's many different reasons why, but the main reason why capitalism is actually good for society, especially in the modern age we live in, is that it offers the ability to make life actually interesting, okay? So, when it comes to the topic of it making life actually interesting, the obvious answer that comes up, of course, is that why is that important, obviously, and the reason why it is important is that it gives people an opportunity to actually do something with out them kind of wanting something to happen. In other words, something bad to happen, whether there's violence or war or chaos of any kind. Actually living in a world where there's obviously, you know something to actually look forward to will which I'll be getting into soon, will make it less likely that people get bored and want something to happen. And that's the truth of the matter. So now that I mentioned that, now let's get into what I mean by interesting. Okay. So when it comes to interesting, what exactly does how does capitalism make things interesting? Well, the biggest way capitalism makes things interesting is the fundamental premise of capitalism. Okay. It's the idea that if you work hard enough, you'll be able to live a much more enjoyable life, with of course more money, more fame, and of course, a big house, many cars, so on and so forth, without having to live in a world where there's nothing to look forward to. There's no way of going up higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Okay. Just like communism, you could do the best job ever and you're still going to be in the same house with the same amount of things, the same amount of food, the same amount of clothing, the same amount of accessories like cars and stuff, without the possibility of ever getting more. And that's the truth about communism, okay? While capitalism offers the ability for people to get more, okay? Through, of course, being rich. And as a result of that, it, for that very reason, makes life actually, no surprise, more actually interesting. Because when you live in a world where people, of course, have more to look forward to. It influences the culture, whether it could be the TV shows, the movies, the music. It makes those things more interesting because, of course, fiction likes to model itself after reality. And when you have, something like the opportunity to have more in life, of course, no surprise that as well, fiction is going to model it, for that matter. And as a result, it's going to make things more interesting when it comes to TV shows. Because who wants to watch a TV show or a movie or music for that matter, okay, where people just say, okay, I can do the greatest thing ever and there's no reward? That would be freaking boring. So, for that very reason, that's why the capitalism system actually makes life way more interesting for that matter, okay? Not only through entertainment, but even on a personal level, because there's always something more to look forward to. There's always a possibility that I can do this and this and this, and I have more in life, and as a result of that, I'll also be happier, for that matter, okay? And yes, money can bring happiness. It's just that most people are not organized with what they want to do when they get money, and as a result, they become miserable and bored and don't really do anything. And that's the truth of the matter. So, in all honesty, money can bring happiness. You just have to know exactly what you fucking want, and a lot of people in this world don't. Actually, to be more specific, most people don't know what they want, okay? But yes, it definitely can bring happiness. But aside from, of course, that point, of course, of like what the purpose of being rich is, the truth of the matter is it just makes life interesting, whether you are able to become rich or not, or you're able to see people become rich, or just in general a mindset it creates. It just makes life more interesting because if you do this and you do that, you can have more. Not to mention it encourages competition, you know as a result of the fact that people can make money off of it, such as world events like Olympic Games and, FIFA games, and just in general, any major sporting event is a byproduct of capitalism because capitalism is obsessed with competition. It's obsessed with the idea of not just competition, but um, but just in general, the idea of awards, for working hard, which of course, if you win a game, you know, um, at like the Olympics or something, guess what? No surprise, you get money, and so on and so forth. So it makes our lives actually interesting and something to look forward to instead of just living in a world where people just live for the sake of living and they don't really do anything. And that's the truth of the matter because the truth is, when it comes to making life actually worth living, okay, as I'm certain you're all aware, living in a modern world, which I got to a little bit for the beginning of this video, the modern world as we live in today is boring, okay? Compared to life in the past, where it's full of a lot of chaos, a lot of wars, a lot of disease outbreaks, a lot of famine, and this and that, which of course are not good things and are not things you should look forward to. um, for that matter. But even still, let's be honest, it made life actually interesting. And not only did it make life interesting, it made life actually more something where you took appreciation for the little things you had instead of not taking appreciation for the things you had. That is a truth of the matter when it comes to life in the past. Okay, it was more interesting than life is today. Okay, let's be honest on a fundamental level. Not to mention, obviously, the because of all the chaos that happened, you could have a hell of an adventure, and that's exactly what I'm trying to get across here. Simply put it, life was more interesting back then. Look at how interesting lives people had back then, whether it could be the age of like the Roman Empire and traveling to all these different parts of the world, or if it's not the Roman Empire, it could have been the medieval ages or the age of exploration when Europe colonized the world. Those were some interesting times. Whether we are a big fan of the things that they did for obvious reasons, you know, let's be honest, those were way more interesting times than life today. But at the same time, the truth of the matter is that's a long time ago. We're living in a 21st century where there's no need to explore or do any of that stuff anymore. And as a result of that, to be quite blunt and honest with you, we can get very bored and actually have people who even have existential crisis where they wonder, like, why do I even exist? So when we have things like obviously, the idea of having more like competition and all this sort of stuff that capitalism creates, specifically the idea of being rich, it helps at least make our lives more interesting instead of living in a world where, there's nothing to look forward to. You just simply eat, sleep, fuck, to have children, in other words, procreating, and if anything, shit. Like, that's boring. Who the fuck wants to live in a world like that? Well, in a world like capitalism, it offers the ability for people to have more, which at least makes, thankfully, our lives actually something to look forward to. And that's the truth of the matter. So, simply put it, though, that is why I believe capitalism is the best system, okay? Even when you get past the fact that it naturally makes more sense, at its fundamental core, it's most important because it keeps life interesting, okay? Because if we don't have capitalism, then we're just gonna live in a world where people are bored as fuck and people will start kind of wanting things to happen. If you know what I'm saying, if you haven't already remember what I said earlier in the video, you just have people who want things to happen because they want life to actually be interesting, which history has shown that it has happened before, okay? Whether it could be the medieval knights of Europe after their era ended, or it could be even, of course, the feudal samurai of Japan. All these things are lessons to learn from history, of what happens when people have nothing to do. Whether it could be the medieval knights, like I was saying before, when they lost their power, or the Japanese samurai during Edo Japan, or any other great age, interesting age for that matter, to be more exact, that was followed by an age of nothing happening afterwards. People always tend to say the same thing, that they're bored and they're kind of depressed as a result of that. And I don't want that to happen because I don't want to live in a world where people just cause problems for the sake of causing problems because, they want things to be interesting to happen. That's not good at all. That's very dystopian. So, truth be told, simply put it, I just genuinely think it's best we just keep capitalism, because without capitalism, there's nothing to really look forward to or anything interesting, to do. And that's the truth of the matter. So capitalism is the best system, and that is the truth. So anyway, this is my video. This is all I have to say. And simply put, if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button. And that is all. And simply put, I'm out. So bye.